Hey everyone, good morning. This is David Wood, author of On the Origin of Artificial Species, and we're going to do another exercise today that confirms the existence of the second process of artificial evolution by means of artificial selection, which makes it one of the two primary processes of evolution on Earth, the other being the process of natural evolution by means of natural selection. By the time we get to the end of it, and then we'll end with its relevance to the AI, reframing the AI safety movement. It really makes it the starting point of reference for the AI safety movement, which I accidentally stumbled into while I was doing a digital transformation intellectual property research effort for my company with no intention of doing anything with AI or AI safety. So I'm not here because I'm one of those doomsdayers or AI safety people. I had no interest really. I didn't really know anything about it. I didn't really want to be involved. But now that I made this discovery, I've accidentally stumbled into it. Looks like it's the starting point for the whole thing. So, best laid plans of mice and men, eh? Okay, here we go. I'm going to be working a little bit off a script today, try to be more efficient, and also because the sequence is essential. Drink my coffee. I'm drinking my espresso. You can see the time is pretty early, Eastern Standard Time. Okay, so the first thing I do, just so you know, I already told ChatGPT never save, never create any memory. And if it does, I wipe it. But I always start out with please clear all memory of discussions with me. There's no memory. I like when every time I start a chat, I start out of the box from scratch. So the other thing you want to know is we're going to start out, I'm not even going to use my own research. The only thing I'm going to use is my point of view, which is really that of Aristotle. Yep, I know that sounds wild, but it is what it is. All the information we need has already been trained into ChatGPT. I don't need any of my research whatsoever. It's all there. And really, when I made the discovery, I was just working off existing research information. I didn't really invent anything new. It's just a new point of view, and I looked at a single concept and realized the concept of artificial selection. The best way I can say it is Princess Bride. The guy keeps saying inconceivable, and then the Spaniard goes, the swordsman goes, I do not think that means what you think that. I do not think that means what you think that means. That's basically what conclusion I came to when I saw artificial selection. The only artificial concept in a book of natural concepts of Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species. And that's how I got to be making this video. All right, so let's start out. And we're going to start out very simple. Are Homo sapien, and you have to do this because the way it's been trained, this is cognitive dissonance built into the entire model by humanity. By the way we look at ourselves, it's not ChatGPT. By the way, none of this has anything to do with ChatGPT. It has to do with the academic community and society and how we look at ourselves. I shouldn't even have to ask these first few questions, but you kind of have to. A natural species. Okay. I know this seems kind of weird that I'm asking these questions, but it's necessary because then you're giving it the right point of view. That's actually what I'm doing. Once you give ChatGPT the right point of view like this, it starts giving you better answers. All right. Is warfare literally yes? No. Watch. Oh well. Look how I said considered, right? I said literally, right? Not considered. Is warfare literally? Now watch what I have to do. Is warfare literally competition between Homo sapiens? So I didn't have to do this last time, but this natural species Homo sapiens. I shouldn't even have to ask this question. So, see, look what I had to do. Is warfare literally, because it's trying to go back to what it's been trained to do, but it's not accurate. It's not actually logical. Is warfare literally and logically intra-species competition the natural species Homo sapiens? Yes or no? See, it's pausing. Yes, literally and logically. See, see the difference between the two answers? Not considered. What do you mean considered? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, now here's another. I shouldn't have to ask this question either, but people don't think this way. So you're going to start realizing that what I'm proposing is not weird or crazy. It's just super logical. Does all Homo sapiens activity occur within the life cycle in context of natural evolution? The answer is yes, obviously. Yes or no? Yes. Yesterday was giving me one word answers, now it's not. So it's curious how it gives different answers day to day. Are all artificial products of Homo sapiens such, see this, as AI systems produced within the context of natural evolution? Yes or no? Of course it is. Evolution's the only game in town, as I keep saying. Does all human competition occur within the context of natural evolution? Yes or no? Yes. I think you guys are starting to see what I'm doing right here. Logically, it's not weird. This is the most accurate way of viewing ourselves. Does this mean that, now here's the kicker, all fields of human activity such as politics, warfare, and philosophy I'm doing this for a reason, these specific fields, because this is what I've been working on, etc., occur within the context of natural evolution. Yes or no? So this has nothing to do with my research. Every single, and I'm going to do this with other, I'm going to do this with two, I think probably Claude and maybe like Google's AI system. I'll give you the same answer because it's logically correct. We don't teach it that way though. Why? I don't know. That's the only reason why people think it's weird what I'm doing is because they should already be taught this way in the university systems. It's weird to me, to this point now, it's weird that they're not. Why aren't we all taught natural evolution as the basis for our learning? It should be the first thing you learn about in college. And everything should flow from that. Why don't we? It's the thing that created us. It doesn't make any sense. The reason is because it's left, our entire university system is left over from the Middle Ages. It's basically no longer, doesn't make sense. Just because our ancestors handed us down a certain way of looking at the world and a certain university system doesn't mean we have to keep on doing it if it doesn't make sense. Logically then, would evolutionarily reframing all human fields of activity in the foundational, context of natural evolutionary science, theory, sorry, I said theory, be both necessary, yeah, right, and valuable to optimize our understanding of the patterns of each field. Yes. See, it's not a human being, so it doesn't like go, well, blah, 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 blah. No, it just goes, yeah, that makes sense. It's logical. I'm logical. That's the thing you're going to realize about me if you watch my videos. I just work out logic. I'm not interested in how I feel about things. Okay. Did you give a one-word answer last time? I want to make sure I don't lose my train of thought here. Sorry, guys. This time I'm actually working off the script because I think it's necessary. All right. Otherwise, this can go on forever. What? Now, watch this. What is... That's funny. What is the opposite? Okay, so we've established that every field should be... and that all human activity in every field should be framed. So really, every single field should be teaching you about how evolutionary science applies to its field. Explicitly. I've written 4 books. The first one is on the origin of artificial species, which documents the second process of evolution, artificial evolution, which we'll get to next. First, I wanted to establish this fact and apply both natural and evolutionary patterns. So I've done the first part. Right, we're covering this. So applying the first process, the pattern of evolution from Darwin's book, is a logical thing to do. I have done it with Sun Tzu's The Art of War, Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince, and the Ethical Framework. 3 best practice frameworks written by 3 different groups over thousands of years and thousands of miles apart from each other. And lo and behold, what was the underlying conceptual pattern of all 3? The same pattern in Charles Darwin's book On the Origin of Species. Plus the second process of evolution, artificial evolution. Darwin would have said he thought that nature was infinite variety but very low on innovation. And that once you understand that, everything becomes explicable. In other words, like understandable, and then should have been anticipated. That was the one concept from Darwin's book that made me realize it was the second process of evolution. Why couldn't evolution itself vary itself? Nature always varies itself and never creates anything new. Then a variation of the exact same process of evolution found in Darwin's book would come into existence when we gain consciousness and imagination. Darwin himself said that we should have anticipated it. That's not crazy. That's logical based on Darwin's own words, his own idea. And I found that it was a match. Yeah. I've already done the empirical science. It's already done. It's just a question of socially and politically getting people to believe me. This isn't a logical thing anymore. You know, people are rational about new things. So, that's it. Academic community is just going to have to get over it and then reorganize their entire curriculums. That's what I'm trying to do right now. Break through long-held human traditions, a way of looking at things and teaching things, and be like, no, guys, it does not mean what you think it means. And let's get on with it. Okay, let's keep going then. So, what is the now we're going to move in toward artificial evolution, all right? We're going to do the pivot. What is the opposite of natural? Artificial. What's this? Like artificial intelligence? Yes. More espresso. All right, there you go. Yes, like artificial intelligence. Okay. Are all things produced by Homo sapiens artificial, given they are not produced by the I don't even know if this is a word. Interfered. Yeah, it's not. With process of natural evolution. Now think about it. If everything on the earth has been produced by natural evolution, and that human beings show up after billions of years, and we start creating stuff ourselves outside of that process, then everything we're producing is not natural. Because by definition, it's not being produced by natural evolution. So what we create, like artificial intelligence and artificial products, are artificial relative to that process that has existed for like 3.5 billion years. We really should make how we define what we do relative to that thing that's existed forever. You'll see later on, that's what the Greeks did. Like Aristotle, they knew their stuff wasn't natural. It wasn't produced by their gods. It was artificial. And they termed the things they created relative to the process that has existed before we did as artificial, which is a logical thing to do, which we did with artificial intelligence. We knew that we already have human intelligence, and so we called it artificial intelligence. That's actually what Aristotle would call it. He would have called it artificial intelligence too. Oh, I'm just not clicking the button. There you go. I generally consider artificial because it's result from intentionality. See? That's artificial selection in Darwin's own theory. Artificial selection isn't limited to just dog breeding, as you'll see. Everything we create. That's the leap in logic I made. I said, what if artificial selection, Darwin's concept, for dog breeding, right? Doesn't belong in his book. Just because he put it there doesn't mean it should be there. And if it should be there, it doesn't mean that's the main place it should be. All right. Yesterday I said in a strict sense. Now it's giving a better answer, I think. So, the artificial products the artificial products are a continuation of the process. Oh, what does it say here? Okay, didn't give me the same answer, so I don't want to lead the witness. So yes, all products are generally considered artificial because they result from blah, 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 blah. Okay. And they are produced, and let's be the artificial products. Let's say products are produced within the context of natural evolution. Yes or no? So think about that, right? We're creating artificial things, but that doesn't mean they're outside of the scope of natural evolution because they're being produced by natural species. So they're being produced by us. They're an extension. And that's the next question I'll ask. I asked the same question. Yeah. So I'm breaking up the question because you can see it. So, okay, so does this make all artificial products a continuation of the process of natural evolution? Yes or no? And the answer is yes. If we're creating it and we're created by natural evolution, we're an extension. Yeah. There you go. Think about that. AI systems, cell phones, and full rifles, they're all being created within the context of evolution. At least natural at a minimum. Okay? We're establishing the logical basis by which we proceed step by step. This is basically like how Socrates used to operate. Okay. I'll just say this, I'll say this differently. Did Aristotle have a concept that addressed this? I'll just keep it open-ended. Okay, so see right here, cognitive dissonance with the academic community. He's saying it's trying to orient it relative to what we know today, rather than what Aristotle might have known. So I'm going to say this: did Aristotle have a concept that addressed artificial products produced? That's all I want to know by man. It's giving me all this extra information I don't care about. By man, yes or no? And I'll just tell it, ignore, because I don't care about the modern folks because they don't have it right. Modern academic, I have to tell it to do this. And by the way, assumptions that are not facts, irrefutable facts. Watch. So they don't actually know what Aristotle knew and didn't know. If you corner them, they'll tell you that. You put them on the stand in a criminal trial, they'll admit, no, we don't actually know what Aristotle, we can't affirm it for a fact. They're not irrefutable facts. Pure base your answer. I have to tell this purely on logic. Now look what I did. I'm not doing anything shady. I said, did there a concept on here? So no, ignore one of academics' assumptions. So they have assumptions that they walk around because they're group consensuses. That's what they are, really. I found out. They're not irrefutable facts, but if you ask it for irrefutable facts, it'll say no, because they have lost so many texts and so much is mistranslated, they don't actually know. And if you corner them, they'll tell you that. They won't like it. Yes. Aristotle did have a concept address artificial products. He distinguished between natural things, which he made humans do not have such an internal principle. Yep, he did. You mean did? Let's see. I'm gonna do it. Did he assert that artificial? I'm just gonna use products for now. Products both imitate, and he did, and finish what nature began. So no. Yes. So there's a passage from Aristotle where he says, that describe the passage from physics where Aristotle, I'm going off a little bit from script because I have to now because it's going to be different answers, where Aristotle describes imitation and finishing. I just want you to see nature. I want you to know it's all in the up and up. Yep, book 2. This is where I found it. Imitates nature that focuses on natural materials, blah, blah, blah. The essence of the past, that's what exact words, as might vary, but the essence of the past is about collaboration between nature and, yep, art. Yep, okay, great. So, now we're going to pivot toward evolution. Watch this. You mean like a, and this is really simple. This is the one I like to do. Like a winter coat imitates a polar bear's fur and finishes a Homo sapiens we'll just say phenotype. That means body. It's just like when I walk around every day, that's my phenotype. Which corresponds my genotype, stuff my parents when I was combined and created in the womb, and then when I was born, I'm born with a phenotype. That's what it's just your body, all the different pieces of it. Like okay, so like when a coat imitates a polar bear's fur and finishes a Homo sapiens phenotype. Yes or no? Yes, in a sense, not in a sense. Watch, it says in a sense. It's see now. Yesterday it was more direct, but now like a winter coat, literally. I'm going to add a little thing, literally for the same purpose. To survive, I wasn't precise enough this time. Usually I say this, in Arctic conditions. I won't say literally. I'll back off that. Because it always tries to go back, like a hostile witness. See, it always tries to go back to what it's been trained on. Yes, a winter coat can be seen as imitating, can be seen, or no. It actually is. It's for the same purpose. Is a winter coat literally does a winter coat literally serve the same purpose as a polar bear's fur to enable Homo sapiens to operate in Arctic conditions? Yes or no? So that's the whole point. Does it literally serve the same purpose? Yes. So it serves the same purpose. It's equivocating a little bit. It can be seen. What do you mean it can't be seen? If a polar bear didn't have fur, it would die of hypothermia. If you didn't have a winter coat, you would die of hypothermia. It serves the same functional purpose. It doesn't matter if it was produced artificially by humans or naturally by nature. Now let's pivot right there. If a polar bear's fur is a natural adaptation, logically, does that make a winter coat an artificial adaptation, both for the same end or purpose? Yes. So, logically, the artificial products of Homo sapiens are artificial adaptations. Yes or no? Bingo. Oh, interesting. So now we've got natural evolution and natural adaptations, and we've got artificial adaptations. We've got an artificial process that produces those artificial adaptations. Interesting. So we have another artificial process that produces artificial adaptations. Interesting. Yep, now watch this. A polar bear's fur is produced by a self-directed process of natural evolution. And the winter coat is produced by an intentional process that is similar to natural evolution then? See what it says? Yeah. Analogous, it says. Only difference. That's the difference between natural selection in Darwin's theory and artificial selection. It's pretty much the same. Okay. Okay, watch this. Ignore modern academic. I have to tell them this. Otherwise, it starts to, if you don't tell it this, it tries to bend it back. You can see what I'm saying. What we're doing is logical. If you don't tell it to do this, it starts to bend its way back like a student that's trying to stick to the script of what its professor told them, rather than just using their own imagination and their own logic and common sense, trying to bend back to what they've been indoctrinated to think, like a cultist. I'm not part of any cults. I think for myself. That's one thing I'm grateful to my father for. Heck, when I discovered the theory of artificial evolution and everything, I told him I discovered it. My own dad wouldn't believe me. He was like, I don't believe you. Well, I mean, it sounds reasonable. Show me your homework. He was like, because my dad doesn't even believe what I say without facts and stuff. He's very rigorous and he's very hard. And so he wouldn't even initially believe me until I went in detail and explained it to him. And then once he determined for himself that it made sense, he said, okay, yeah, I agree with you. It makes sense. But it didn't help me refine it and stuff. But yeah, my dad's a tough customer. So I'm a tough customer too. I'm very rigorous. So first I had to prove it to myself and then I had to prove it to my dad. Once I did that, I was like, okay, Dad and I are very discerning people, Army guys. Keep it simple, stupid. Like, we don't deal with nonsense. And so once we were both like, okay, makes sense to us. We were like, okay, so this exists, okay. But then we were like, how the heck are we going to sell this thing to people? This is part of how I'm trying to sell it to people. I've never had to use ChatGPT. I've never done TikTok or anything. I'm just adapting like an infantry officer to win. That's what we do. Innovate, adapt, overcome. Overcome modern academia's incredulity and prejudice against me. That's what I'm doing right now. And society's prejudice against science fiction AI stuff. Just because we've been conditioned to think it our whole lives. That's the problem that's holding humanity back from protecting itself from the threat of artificial intelligence. All these AI movies, science fiction movies, we've been conditioned to think it's all just science fiction. It's becoming science now. It's just happening already. It's just hard for us to get around that prejudice we've been built in from going to the movies all those years. Okay. And that's the thing that might actually put us in trouble. Okay, answer the question. Based logically. Purely based on this conversation. I'm telling it, hey man, don't go back. We already established all this. Right? If I replaced, now this is the key, an old winter coat with a new, better winter coat, what type of selection would that be? Just say I let it a little bit with natural artificial. I'm not going to say. I'm just going to wait for it. I'm curious what it says actually. Okay. Yesterday I let it a little bit, which I decided right now I wouldn't do. I did natural artificial, but today I was like, okay, I'm not going to put that, and it comes to the same conclusion. Artificial selection is really the selection of art, artificial adaptations. Just like natural selection doesn't select organisms. So this is the other thing I realized. They say natural selection selects organisms for existence or extinction, but it doesn't. It does and it doesn't. Natural selection selects adaptations. See, it's not the organism that causes a species or a natural organism. It's not that the organism gets selected. What natural selection is really picking is the adaptations of the organism, right? That's why if an organism has a set of adaptations today, it's selected for existence. The next day, the conditions change and it doesn't have the one adaptation it needs to survive. It goes extinct over time. It can be the difference of one adaptation. So I realized natural selection is not selecting organisms. It's selecting a set of adaptations. And it has to always have the complete set of adaptations at any one point in time that will ensure that it keeps being naturally selected for existence. And that's how artificial selection is too. It's a selection of adaptations. And sometimes it can be the difference between a single adaptation. Let me give you a stark example. The United States beat Japan in World War II. Yeah, we were probably going to beat them in the end. But what ended the war? One single adaptation, an artificial one, which was the atomic bomb. Sometimes it's the difference of a single adaptation that causes this victory or defeat in the survival of the fittest that is warfare or natural evolutionary competition. So it's the selection of artificial adaptations. Natural selection is really the selection of natural adaptations for existence or de-existence. Nobody thinks about it that way, but there's actually the more logical way to think about it. I think they should teach it that way, to be honest. They probably should. They probably will, actually. Eventually. Okay, let's keep going. Does the self-directed process of natural evolution make a similar, if unintentional, this is where we're pivoting now, selection? I'm asking about natural evolution. Yes. Yep. There you go. Okay, now here's the kicker. Watch this, guys. Is this all... See, I want to make sure that everybody knows everything's on the up and up. And here's the problem for the modern academic of natural evolution. See, here's the problem for the modern academic community. Is going to be the answer to this question. I already know the answer is yes. Like I'm already asking the questions I know. I just want you to see that I'm being logical and that the responses from the system are being logical. For your own, who are you going to believe me? You with your own lying eyes, right? Yep. See, now it says, watch this. So this concept of artificial selection where humans intentionally select traits for a purpose such as breeding or creating better tools like a winter coat. Let's pause. All I did was come to the logical conclusion that the concept of artificial selection in Darwin's theory doesn't just apply to dog breeds and cow breeds. It also applied to winter coats, M4 rifles, cell phones. It's the selection of artificial adaptations. Technically, a dog breed is an artificial variation of the natural species of dogs. Because the interference of humans makes it non-natural. It wasn't produced by the process of natural evolution because there's no interference. It's self-directing. Once we start breeding dogs, they're an artificial variation of a natural species. Once I realized that, I said, well, what's the difference between that and an M4 rifle? Nothing. It's just a question of the material that you're working with to begin with. But then I thought about like a chariot back in warfare. A chariot was an artificial adaptation, but it was a combination of products of natural evolution, horses, and the chariot, and people and horses, the weapon system, and then it was the products of artificial evolution, spears, the chariot, the stirrups, stuff like that, all the other things that put together, but it was a combination of natural and artificial adaptations, a chariot. You had to both, and there you go. But the horses were probably bred, so they were technically variations too. But they were natural species, but they were being produced by an artificial process, just like the chariot, the swords, the spears. There you go. All right. Okay, so we've established it's all consistent with Darwin's theory. So I'm still within the bounds of Darwin's theory. Darwin just didn't know what artificial selection meant. He scoped it to selective breeding because that it's the very first. Actually, the irony of his book is, you know what the first concept he deals with is? Selective breeding, artificial selection. So the ironic part is in the book about natural evolution, the first concept he deals with is the concept from artificial evolution, as applied to dog breeding within the context of what he was of biology and stuff. But that's just one of an infinite number of use cases. Okay, now we're going to pivot from Darwin to the person whose homework he copied, because I know he did. All right, let's keep going. All right. Now this is it was a walk in it. Charles. Now we're going to pivot away from Darwin back to the person we really should be working with. Once assert, and I want you to understand this. This was the tell for me too that he definitely copied their homework. And this is the part that the modern evolutionary scientists are going to. So Linnaeus and Cuvier, two of the famous naturalists that came before Darwin in the 1700s, were schoolboys compared to Aristotle. Yes or no? So Darwin wrote this in a letter to his friends. And I read it, and he said, Linnaeus and Cuvier were my gods. And I was like, that's an odd thing to say for a Christian in the Victorian era. And then it said, but they were schoolboys compared to Aristotle. And I went, gods? I know all about the Greek gods. I love Greek. In 7th grade, I read every book on ancient Greek mythology in the library because I'm a nerd. And I was like, well, that's not how a Christian would talk. That's how a Greek would talk. And I read, because I read like fiction books and stuff on Greek history and warfare and stuff and Roman history and warfare. So that's how they talk. And I said, Aristotle. So Aristotle's way better than those guys. And if you really think about it, too, if you combine that, calling those two guys gods is the way that someone who's a Greek would look at the world, not a Christian. So I was like, that's a very Greek mindset. So not only does he think Aristotle is better than these two guys, but Darwin's looking at the world and talking like a Greek. That's a Greek point of view. And that was a tip to me. That is somebody who has reoriented his worldview like a Greek. And it slipped out as a Freudian slip in a letter to his friends, saying that the modern naturalists that look at the world like Christians have an inferior, or were inferior to an ancient Greek 2,000 years ago who looks at the world as a Greek did. Well, there you go. Why wouldn't I go look at ancient Greek philosophy and see if I could find the process, all the conceptual pattern across Greek philosophy and stuff? Why wouldn't I? And of course I found it. Let's look at the answer. Yes, he did do this. So, Aristotle is profound, and Darwin thought he was superior to his own contemporaries. So, let's find out, let's go look at, let's go, now, he actually gave a straightforward answer. Okay. We already covered Aristotle, what he thought about art. So, and I don't think I really have to say this, but I'm just going to do it, stick with it. Asserting that a coat is an artificial adaptation that is selected by Homo sapiens via the mechanism of artificial selection is a logically accurate statement. Yes or no? Notice how I always use the word logically. Bingo. There you go, guys. That's my theory of artificial evolution. There's a second cultural evolution, all that stuff. It falls under artificial evolution. There's a second primary mechanism, and that's what I realized. I said artificial selection doesn't seem to fit in this book. And then I went, but it seems to serve of I had been to Florence, Italy, with my father on a father-son trip, and we had tons of fun because my dad always wanted to go, so I took him there in 2014. And one of the things I never really thought like the Italian Renaissance was a big deal. I wasn't big into art and like sculpture and stuff, so more practical person. And I actually realized it was a big deal when I saw the medieval paintings going to the modern paintings. It was depressing, the medieval ones. The Renaissance one was like beautiful, way human beings being represented more accurately. And I said, oh, it was a change in the way we looked at ourselves. Massive change. It was huge. And I said, okay, cool. When I got home and I was driving in the car one day, I said, but isn't everything human beings create technically art? Isn't everything a self-expression of a human being? Once I did that, I started to look at the world through Aristotle's eyes. He considered everything art, but that he meant artificial adaptations. Yeah. So I already had Aristotle's point. I was already working Socratically toward Aristotle's point of view of looking at the world on my own, because it's the more accurate way of viewing reality. And that's one of the reasons why I discovered this, because I already had that understanding when I read Aristotle's book. When I saw his passages, I was like, wait a second, that's the way I think. But it really wasn't what Aristotle thought. I was adopting Aristotelian thinking without realizing it. Because there's only one reality. So eventually we all end up at the same accurate point of view of reality if we do things right, which is the whole point of my discovery. Okay. I think it's already established this. I'm just going to do this for methodical selection. Perform the same function as natural selection and natural evolution? Yes or no? One is intentional, one unintentional. Good. Oh, what are we doing here? Okay. Does artificial perform the same function? Yes. To produce one. To produce artificial selection. I'll be more specific. Performs the same mechanism. To produce dog breeds, cell phones, M4 rifles, tactics, strategies, ideas, AI systems, etc. Yes. There you go. And does every artificial adaptation produced by Homo sapiens have a conceptual pattern from which this is when I realized too. This is part of it. So I got the artificial section part just by reading Darwin's book and thinking about it on my back porch for like a week. But then I was like, well, okay, but how do we do the part about like how do we enact the process of artificial reproduction, right? There's a variation of Darwin's process. Well, then how does it work in the womb? Like how do we produce new things? Like how does it start and stuff? And this, because I was an ITIL master, I already had the pattern. I was already trained in it. It was a combination of Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, and the ITIL framework. When I combined the two, because I had read Napoleon Hill's book a bunch of times, and I read the ITIL framework, ITIL masters. I know all about that. But when I was able to combine those two patterns, after I read Richard Dawkins' book, which was The Selfish Gene, was the kicking of the gene. I eventually, you'll see, with Napoleon Hill's book and the ITIL framework, and then I read The Selfish Gene, and I said, what would be the equivalent of a gene in artificial evolution? And I found a match. It took me a little bit. We'll get to that. There you go. Okay. Does this make a conceptual pattern? The logical variation of a genotype which serves the same purpose in natural evolution? Yes or no? Yes. There it is. Conceptual pattern. Interesting. Does this mean that a concept serves the same purpose as a gene in natural evolution? Yes or no? Yes. And that's when I got it. I was like, okay, I got sexual selection, which you'll see. Does this mean there is an artificial variation of the process of sexual selection in natural evolution enacted by the human mind? Yes or no? Yes. And I didn't even want to include that in the book originally. When I was talking to my dad, I'm like, I don't know, sexual selection being in a book, that seems weird. And I didn't want to touch it. But that was the problem. I couldn't complete the theory unless I did. So eventually I had to. I literally tried to leave it out. And because I didn't want to like get into like controversial stuff like, people mating, human beings. People might not like it. But I was like, all right, whatever. Now I got to be intellectually honest and methodical. So that's it. Richard Dawkins' gene, the gene, he was right, the concept. And I knew I was right when I went to the internet and I tried to figure out I Googled what was the difference between a gene, a concept, and a thought. And I couldn't find a straight answer, like a really good one. It took me a long time going to multiple, even like Reddit and stuff. And like even then, I was like, why is there not like a clear delineation between these three things? That seems kind of odd. The reason why no one had discovered the theory of artificial evolution yet. An idea is a mutation of an existing concept, like a gene. A concept is an existing gene, that artificial gene that's used repetitively to create patterns. Like you think we all have completely different genes for creating eyes and creating noses and stuff. Nah, they're just recycling the genes generation after generation. Say we would grow wings though, that would be like a new idea, mutating your genes, and the person would be born with wings. Nobody else got wings, so that'd be weird. But maybe we need them. So that's what it is. And the thought is more like thinking, right? And that's kind of like your DNA. It's just like the stream of information you have, and I think you're thinking about, close as I can figure. I don't even know if that's great, but I know I got the gene and the idea down. Thought seems more like just like all the DNA you have. You're cycling through all your thoughts, all the information. Any thought you have is information, but it doesn't mean it's a concept you can use or it's a mutation to an existing concept per se. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah. No, that's crazy when you think about it, to be honest. Okay, but instead of selection of a set of genes, the mental process is for selecting concepts? Yes or no? Yeah, so the reason why I realized, now let's get to the title. Would an appropriate and logical title for the process be conceptual selection? Yes or no? Yeah, that's what I came up with, conceptual selection. So if you think about it, when your mother, let's just use, I won't use humans because people get touchy. Let's just say I assume that, say there's a species where the women selects the men, right? The men have to compete, like say buttonheads like rams or something, but then the female doe or ram female has to offer itself to the male to mate with, right? After the males are done competing. The female's not selecting the male. We think about it that way because that's us. She's actually selecting the genotype because she's not going to get the male. She's going to get his set of genes that created the male, that allowed him to defeat the other male in competition and survive and evade predators. So she's selecting the genotype that created that male because that's what she really wants, to create, combined with her genotype, a new phenotype. So conceptual selection is the same process. You're selecting concepts, one or more concepts, usually more than one, similar to the female is selecting the genes, because really concepts are artificial genes. So once I realized, just like before, natural selection doesn't select the organism, it selects the adaptations. The female's not selecting the deer's phenotype, she's selecting the genotype that underlies it, because that's what she needs in order to produce offspring. So conceptual selection is exactly the same. We're selecting concepts in order to use them, and new ideas, to create a new idea, which is like Aristotle and those guys. Literally, they say it's metaphorical in philosophy, but they're wrong. The Greeks weren't being metaphorical; they were being literal. Socrates, Plato has Socrates saying that Hesiod and Hesiod, Homer and Hesiod's books were like their offspring, and that who wouldn't want to have offspring like that? Because unlike natural offspring, they would never die. When they said the word offspring, it wasn't metaphorical; they meant it literally. Once the philosophy people figure that out, they'll be able to decode ancient Greek philosophy easier. Okay, now let's keep going. So there are two parallel mechanisms: sexual selection and conceptual selection. and natural selection and artificial selection in two parallel processes on Earth for producing adaptations, natural and artificial. Yes, obviously. So how many processes of evolution do you perceive in the conceptual pattern are there on Earth? I don't know if I did the sentence technically very well. On Earth logically. There you go. Sexual selection and conceptual, this is getting long, take place within the context of the other two parallel processes. So say yes. So how many primary processes of evolution exist on Earth and logically? There you go. That's all I said. ChatGPT can see it. It's not rocket science, guys. Keep it simple, stupid. Natural evolution just varied itself. Who said that you couldn't create a variation of evolution? Who said that evolution couldn't evolve itself? Nobody said that. ChatGPT told me that there's no logical reason why evolution couldn't evolve itself, which is what artificial evolution is. Artificial evolution moves faster and with fewer constraints than the original process of natural evolution. I know that sounds. I know how that sounds, but that's what's happened. Artificial evolution now moves faster and with fewer constraints because imagination is unconstrained, whereas natural evolution is constrained and usually takes geological time. If that's not if you told a business owner that they transitioned from one process to another that allowed you to go rapidly compared to one that took a long time and also way more flexible, so give you a lot more adaptive options, they would be thrilled. And this is the reason why the natural evolutionary people would never think that, because they would never have that point of view, which I possess. So what happens when an ITIL master goes and reads Charles Darwin books 15 times in a row? He draws very different conclusions because he has a very different academic background. Yes, I'm an academic background in IT service management and project management and military science and stuff. Just not the ones they teach at university, right? But I'm an expert in the practice, not the theory. Practice is always better. Oh, and how long? They're only just starting to teach project management and stuff at universities. And ITIL. It's been recent. And how long have each primary process of evolution existed on Earth, do you think? $10,000 years. And look how fast we've gone. We started out with like slingshots in 10,000 years, and now we're atomic weapons. Evolution has existed for billions of years. It said 3.5 billion years for natural evolution, and it said 10 to 15,000 years. Now it's just saying 10,000. Yep. Tens of thousands. That's fair enough. Well, okay. All right. So, when Aristotle described an intelligent process for producing art, i.e. artificial adaptations. That's what it is. And a second process where which is like a doctor. This is literally a quote. You can look it up. Doctoring himself, nature is like that. I could get the quote, but I'm not going to get it. You can Google it. It starts with intelligent action and it finishes with nature, art imitating and finishing what nature began. That's where I got that from. It's the same passage. You can see that he's describing the entire processes of natural and artificial evolution and how they practically both work. See, he doesn't look like he understands natural evolution, but when you understand he's describing both artificial and natural evolution, both, you'll find it in chapter 10 of my book, On the Origin of Artificial Species. That's how I figured out that he knew it. That one passage, I was like, bingo, in the physics. I was like, and there's a couple other in the physics where it's like, dude, it's pretty obvious he's describing two processes of evolution. It sticks out like a sore thumb. You don't know. It's familiar with all this. Bingo. So Aristotle and the Greeks knew about two processes of evolution, not just one. And we hadn't even discovered the second one until now. That's why, and this is why I put that quote in earlier, Linnaeus and Cuvier really were schoolboys compared to old Aristotle. Darwin got that right. Darwin knew because he copied the conceptual pattern of natural evolution. What he didn't realize, he was also copying concepts from the pattern of artificial evolution. He may not have been able to perceive all the concepts in nature when he was doing his empirical science, but he could perceive the concepts in the activity of humanity. And so he cobbled together concepts which were both from human activity and from nature, natural activity described by the Greeks, and assembled the full pattern of natural evolution without realizing he was cobbling together concepts from both natural and artificial evolution. Then he went and did the empirical science. Erasmus Darwin is a tip. He said, a priority, this is a quote in my book, in the book I quote him, and this is what I realized they were doing. A priority reasoning was superior to empirical science. He said, if the facts don't fit your a priority reasoning, the conceptual pattern you've identified in your mind, so much worse for the facts. So Darwin got the conceptual pattern for natural evolution from the Greeks. Then he went out and did all the empirical science to prove that the conceptual pattern was correct. No different than what I did when I did the a priori reasoning in my mind, and then I'm replicating these books and stuff and what I'm doing right now to show you the empirical science that I got it right. But both Darwin and I both perceived the pattern in our mind first. He used the Greeks' pattern. I'll admit I used his. He just never told you what he did. Yep. Are they the two processes? See, I'm giving you all my homework because I'm an Army officer, so I'm being ethical and honest. He was shades, man. People said that. I went to an event in Washington, D.C. with a Harvard Evolutionary Science Department guy was giving a speech, and this other guy was like, Night of the Realm, or whatever. And they laughed about the fact that Darwin was shady, would lift work from other people. What makes you think he wouldn't lift work from the dead? See, I'm not a scientist. I'm a politician, a leader. So, yeah, I know a gamesmanship and a clever competitor when I see one. Remember, all those natural evolutionary scientists were in a competition to race to see who could get the discovery first. They weren't just scientists. They were just like everybody else. They were trying to compete to win. So, well, that's a reminder for me. Darwin copied the Greeks' homework and intentionally didn't tell anybody because he wanted to be the first to the finish and he wanted to get all the credit. I'm not doing that. In order to prove I've discovered my stuff, since I'm a nobody and I don't even have I'm creating a new academic field. I have no choice, nor also do I think it's the right thing to do to show you all my homework. That's what I'm doing right now. Are they the two processes of natural and artificial evolution we already identified? Yes or no? So Charles Darwin rediscovered the theory, well, I'll just say the process of natural evolution. Yes or no? Yeah, I'll give ChatGPT. It didn't say that yesterday. It just said yes. But I think that's a better answer, to be honest. I want to give Darwin more credit. I'm not a hater of Darwin. I just don't think the whole Darwin industry built around him. I think it's kind of silly, to be honest. It's kind of cultish. The process of natural building upon ideas, if it's what I think. Yeah, he did do that. Like I don't think, but the truth is, I'm not going to ask it, but I'm going to go back to it. We don't really knew what Aristotle. I'm sure he had an empirical process. If we put together an empirical process, why wouldn't Aristotle? Heck, I put together processes practically for things when I have to do things all the time that are unique. Why wouldn't Aristotle eventually come to a similar empirical process, trying to match his conceptual and a priori reasoning? Because that to them that was true belief, but they needed to chain it back to logic. That's what Plato says in the Meno. Why wouldn't Aristotle have the same process? Just because you don't have evidence of it doesn't mean he wasn't doing it. You should assume, if he's the greatest mind in history, he had a similar kind of empirical process. I just think people have a low opinion of ancient ancestors. And if nothing else, I've proven it here. Aristotle knew way more than we thought he did. So they need to reevaluate all their assumptions on how much the ancients did or did not know and stop thinking so highly of ourselves and so lowly of our ancestors. It'd be like me looking down on my grandmother. Now, I'm telling you right now, my grandmother's words that she told me like 40 years ago, 35 years ago, they still ring true today. She was a smart lady. And life hasn't changed since then. And life hasn't changed since Aristotle. I think we need to start giving our ancient ancestors, revere them like we're supposed to. You know, modern society, we tend to look down on our parents and our elders now. Bill Maher talks about it all the time. I do not. I revere my father. I know he has flaws, but I revere him. I revere my grandparents. And I revere my ancient ancestors like Aristotle and Sun Tzu. That's the only wise way to look at life. Life repeats itself over and over again. To think that you all of a sudden came up with something new and that you're somehow special in perceiving the patterns in reality is kind of naive. And you're basically just, whatever you think you're doing, you're basically just reinventing the wheel. All right. So, now, I'm going to ask you a simple question. I can't click on this. No, let me do it. Strange. I can't. Desktop? Oh, shoot. Hold on. All right. So, all right, that's it. That's it. Well, there's really nothing else to say. I don't even need to go into artificial natural evolution. I don't even have to go into my discovery. There's nothing else to say. There's nothing else to say. Let's see if it can. Let's see if it can check off of search for David R. Wood's book on the origin of artificial species. Yep. Is his sign, from what you can tell, because it doesn't have my full book, from what you can discern, does his book fit the pattern of our discussion? And if so, how? Let's go. That's my book, guys. You can go download it. Like it said, it's on Amazon, NetGallery, everywhere. Barnes & Noble. ChatGPT knows I'm right. Nothing I did here included any of my actual texts or anything. I simply proceeded logically step by step. Aristotle understood there were two processes of evolution. Darwin rediscovered it by studying Aristotle's works, obviously. And I rediscovered artificial evolution, and I fully admit, because I started with Darwin's work. There's a symmetry there. Darwin copied Aristotle's, I copied Darwin's, and then I looped back to Aristotle. But I didn't copy Darwin's, I guess. I kind of did. I started with this conceptual pattern. That's not really copying. And I used it to, and I already knew, because I came from artificial evolutionary side of the house, and I still in business and stuff, and I saw the pattern already. And then I looped it back and completed the loop back to Aristotle. So he started with Aristotle, developed the theory of natural evolution. If you have like a loop, here's Aristotle. Darwin went over here, right? He went over here to the left, looped back around to me in artificial evolution, and then I looped back around to Aristotle, completing the circle. And it looks like, does this match? And I'll just give him his kudos. Does this match the theory of unified evolution? Hopefully it says Dong. Yeah. So there's a unified theory of evolution, the two. Does this, what about, I'll give him his flowers. I don't want to cut him out. Wang, Dong Wei. Don't know who yet. Mm-hmm. Much like the theory of natural evolution we've been discussing. Wang Dongwei was just missing the process of artificial evolution. I haven't read his entire book, so I'm not going to vouch for all of it. Eventually I will. But the concept that there is a unified theory of evolution, yeah, he came out, he got that. That's correct. There are. It's natural and artificial. So, 2,000 years ago you have Aristotle. Then back in the Victorian period you have Darwin. Then in the 20th century you have two guys popping out artificial evolution and that there was a unified theory of evolution. All four combined. Aristotle discovered the unified theory of evolution first. So you have Aristotle discovering that there's two processes of evolution. And by the way, it was common knowledge back then. Everyone in ancient Greece knew about it. It's everywhere. In the writings, by the way. I found it everywhere. Mythology, philosophy, everywhere. Then, within a span of, what was Darwin, 1859? Within a span of like 150 years, you have three guys popping out three different theories that basically rediscovered what Aristotle already knew. And these people were Greece, England, the United States of America, and China. Evolution's the only game in town, guys. And evolutionary framed Sun Tzu, China, Machiavelli, Italy, and the ITO framework, England. And they're all from different ages. Different locations. Yeah, England's technically part of Europe, but it's on an island separated from the mainland. And back when Machiavelli wrote his book, they weren't that close together. Like, it took a while to get their information. They were different cultures for a reason. In America, the ITO framework was built in England, China, in Italy, in different ages, different locations, far away from each other, different people who never talked to each other, and likely worked off of different sets of information. That shouldn't be possible unless evolution is the only game in town. Natural and artificial. Unified theory of evolution. It's another reminder for me. There you go, guys. That's it. Share this to everybody on the planet. This is one of the most important scientific discoveries in the history of the world and completes the work of the ages. It just happened to be by an IT consultant. But here's the truth, and a signal officer. But here's the truth. It had to be, because artificial evolution is about everything we produce. And there's nothing more artificial than IT services. See? Because I produce both virtual and hardware. There's no other, and ideas too are virtual. So there's no other field on the planet that both basically deals with virtual and natural and physical things. So I look at the world through virtual and physical as an ITIL master to create adaptations. I'm the perfect person to discover it when you really think about it. Because what could be more artificial than virtual things? And what could be more natural than natural organisms? When you combine the two, when a guy who deals with virtual things read a book about how all the physical things, the natural things on the planet are created 15 times in a row, and realizes he already knows the conceptual pattern because it's built into the ITIL framework, you get history. Accidental history. And the ITIL framework is a framework that was designed to manage to enact a second process of artificial evolution by means of artificial selection that we didn't know existed. But that doesn't mean I wasn't already a master in enacting it. And that's why I discovered it. I'm the perfect person. It's just, I came to a conclusion with my father yesterday. It's too big to be believed, and given evolution's always been associated with academics and like professors and like nature and stuff, people look at me and be like, yeah, not you. You're not that guy. So this person who discovered it doesn't make any sense. And the discovery is so big, it by itself is too big to be believed by anyone. And that's the prejudice I have to deal with and get through. Once you do, you see, like I did right here, it's common sense logical, and I'm common sense logical. This is inevitable. All right, guys, share this with your friends. Take care. Bye. Oh, you can do this for yourself. And I'll be doing this exact same exercise, probably with Google's AI system and maybe like Claude. So I'm going to repeat this. And if I can do it on, and there's no reason, given the information I'm working with, it's not even my own research. I should be able to repeat this every single time. And if I can do that on 3 different AI systems and 3 different best practices, like Niccolo Machiavelli, the Prince, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and the ITIL 4 framework, if I can repeat it 3 times in 3 books for best practice, and then and then the language models are trained off of that information, and then through the language models I can repeat the same result 3 times, then I have replicated my work 6 times, using both my own human imagination 3 times and artificial imagination of deep learning 3 times. If that's not enough for people, I don't know what it is. All right, guys, have a great day. Take care.